We have an intrinsic pull to worship something, and that's the addictive master-slave relationship that many of us are having trouble shaking off because we're so afraid of blaspheming against the support systems that we feel we still need in order to exist on the planet and to exist throughout the astral plane. Okay? So I just feel like that's an elephant concept in the room, really, that comes up a lot with the various people who I work with. And they're so afraid to take on that thought. They're so afraid to imagine for one moment that you came here not to manifest God on earth, but you came here to perfect God in heaven. Because God in heaven needs improvement. And God in heaven is not all-knowing, not even all-powerful. Okay? There's an aspect of omnipotency, but God is still trying to develop and figure out how deep God's well goes. That's where we get the concept of Odu, or the concept of Oduduwa, which is that deep pot. Oftentimes, when you look in the Risha tradition, or Santeria, or Lukumi, or Palo, you see these iron pots, right? Or you see these cauldrons. And what those cauldrons represent, they represent the womb. But more importantly, they represent the infinite darkness of our potential. Okay? So you put different things in the pot. You may put some railroad spikes in the pot, which represents sperm. You may put a chain in the pot along with the railroad spikes, which represent the Kundalini, or also represent the evolutionary chain of the DNA helix. Okay, there's various things that you might put in the pot. You might put camwood, which is that red bark, or we also call Osun, which represents menstrual blood. Okay, menstrual blood represents the source, okay, which is connected to Oshun. Oshun's name, it means the source, but more importantly, the source of where blood flows is Oshun. So you have these various things that you're going to put in this cauldron. And these things you put in the cauldron to try to figure out how deep the rabbit hole goes. What can I actually accomplish? How deep can I transform? And more importantly, God is trying to figure out how far can I sink into corruption? How fermented can I become? How rotten can I become in order to see how far I will spring back into the light? Okay, this is where we get the concept of Sagittarius, or also the concept of Ochosi. Anyone's familiar with Ochosi, spelled O-S-O-O-S-I. Sometimes you'll see it spelled O-C-H-O-S-I, Ochosi. Okay, and Oshosi means the left-handed sorcerer. That's what Oshosi means, left-handed sorcerer, the one who works in the dark. And the concept of the arrow, he's a hunter, he's Ogun and Shango's brother. He shoots that arrow, and what happens is that the arrow, it shoots up to the heavens and then comes back down and hits a target. And what that represents is the ability and the potential of astral travel. Let me go to heaven and get some of the answers of the astral realm, the answers that I need, and bring them back down to the earth to see what I can use further on the earth to further corrupt myself. Okay? So one of the interesting concepts with this is that when we start getting into a Orisha tradition or indigenous tradition or indigenous knowing, one of the first things we think we have come into that level of learning for is for the purposes of alleviating the suffering in our own lives. And I'm going to tell you that's absolutely false. One of the reasons that you come into this level of power is to corrupt yourself further into human thought, into human reality. And the further you corrupt yourself, the further you transform yourself, which now leads to a springback, a balancing, a further enlightenment. The further you go into the dark, the further Lucifer falls into the dark, Darth Vader goes to the dark side. The further dark he gets, the more powerful he becomes. Because he had to get really into some evil stuff, Darth Vader, in order to become Lord Vader and as powerful as he was. But look what happened when he redeemed himself back to the light. Now he became an extremely powerful light being because of his delve into the dark side. Okay? So that is really why you come into these traditions, is to awaken and enliven your godhood while you're on the planet, to really, really explore your life on Aye, which is what in this tradition, that means the earth's crust. The earth's crust is not to be on the planet and to represent heaven. It's not about that. God is not so, or Olodumare is not so narcissistic that Olodumare needs to see its representation. Olodumare sends us down with a question, and that question is supposed to lead us into the deepest corruption of what that question could actually be in order for us to have the strongest and most powerful answer when we transition and dissolve from our body and return back into gases of Jesus. Okay? That resurrection of gases is what brings a more powerful being back to Olodumare. Olodumare can now say, okay, now I'm better than I was before Isaac Hayes came back, before Barry White came back, before Michael Jackson came back, Whitney Houston, Asa Hilliard. We're going down the list. These are things that evolve God further.
Oh, just a quick question, brother. I mean, because this is powerful information. When you say that when you speak of Lucifer and how the darker Lucifer got, the more powerful he became. Now, that really runs, especially to our New Age spirituality practitioners out there, and of course, our Christian and Islam practitioners out there, where they are taught that, well, the darkness is something that must be avoided, and we are only to seek the light. But, it really warms my heart to hear you say that, brother, because I've been trying to tell people for so long that until you're willing to embrace the darkness in yourself, you will never, ever truly be whole, much less be powerful.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. And it's the power that comes from darkness. It's the enlightenment that comes from light. So it works hand in hand, very similar to our yin and yang symbol. Okay, it works hand in hand, but it's that power of corruption that one needs to understand. We can't speak about melanin in one hand and black is beautiful and black is too black, too strong, and not really understand where that sits within the context of celestial development, or it sits in the context of our own personal and spiritual development. The darkness is where all your demons lie. And the word demon comes from Damien, which means hidden substance or hidden genius. Okay? So when you start delving into the darkness of yourself, what you're delving into is your own genius. Now, why is it that genius lives in dark? Because in the darkness is where your ancestors are. That's what those voices are, what we call demons that we hear. Those are your ancestors. Now, they represent your genius because they're able to activate your past life talents, skills, and abilities. But if you just want to live in the light all day, then you don't really tap into those regressive talents, those regressive traits that will help you to not only empower yourself on the planet, but will also acknowledge the shoulders that you're actually standing on. Like we say, the ancestors are the shoulders that we stand on. But are you truly doing that if you're constantly running from this? You see this in movies like The Mummy, or even like Stargazer. I remember some of the cartoons even. Every time when I was a child, we watched cartoons and The Mummy came. It was supposed to be a scary thing. You run from the mummy. So you're running from your ancestral energy, and that's the energy that's actually giving you the talents that you currently have, because you have lifetimes and lifetimes that are deposited in your blood that's giving you that darkness, that dark power. And dark power is nothing but melanin power. So if you're afraid of the darkness, you're afraid of melanin. And the truth is, most of what people understand about avoiding and abstaining from things that are dark come from cultural influence. If they really were to study the text, or to really look at, maybe some of the original translations of some of the words, you would find that darkness gets a bad rap. Okay? Oh, yeah. Yeah. And lightness could potentially get a bad rap, because the truth is they can do the same thing. They both blind you. So, I mean, either way you go, you don't really want to be in the light, and you don't really want to be in the dark for too long. You want to be in the middle, in that gray area, that middle point. In the middle point, when we look at the symbol of Ra, divine light, Kemetic symbol, you have a circle and you have a dot in the middle of it. And that dot represents that middle point. So I'm not going to various extremes. And those extremes is what bring those dead rituals and those dead gods. Because when people get back into traditional systems, get into traditional spirituality, they a lot of time become uber religious, except they're able to nestle in that religiosity within their new level of consciousness, so it feels okay. So now they're all about the ancestors, they're all about the Orisha, and that's the polarity that you're now leaning really hard onto because you haven't found your middle point. And the middle point is a very personal thing. So for me and for you to be able to speak in a public forum like this, and for you to say, I think people need to embrace the dark more, that's your middle point. And when I say your middle point, the fact that you can express it is your personal middle point. Other people may do it because you just said it, but they may not have the courage to say it. But that may be okay, because that may not be their middle point. Me taking a stance as one who's initiated in the same systems that I'm speaking about, and I'm initiated at a very high level, and me saying, yes, these systems, people are misunderstanding them, and what they're really about is self-actualization, not a life of eternal servitude. That's my middle point. And everybody may not be able to make that statement, but it certainly is a truth that Olodumare is trying to express to the world through you and through me. But, you know, we have this habit of doing things that don't work, and we keep doing it over and over and over again, and expecting, of course, different results. We know what that defines itself as. But it's really a vampirical thing that we start to get into, and we're feeding shadow energies that no longer have the corporeal ability to actually move anything on the planet of any great substance, because the buildings have been knocked down. The buildings are old, decrepit, and condemned, and we're just feeding the shadows of the old building without looking at where inside of that building was air, or what we call Ami in this tradition, which is divine breath, wind, or what we call Shu, you know, in the Kemetic tradition, very similar to Eshu. Eshu means to begin things or to initiate things. Okay, that's what the word Eshu means, to initiate. So if you knock the building out and the Ami or the Eshu or the wind is still there, we should be looking at where the wind is going. Or maybe if we were standing near the building, the wind is inside of us now. Instead of now mourning over the loss of the building and feeding the shadow. So it's very similar to how we mourn over the loss of our traditions and of our gods and so forth. And I'm not saying we just lost them. They were decimated and taken. But in some senses, before even that, it was still a loss. When Osiris or Osir decided, he said, when he came down to the underworld, said, you know what, I like it down here. I'm going to run it now. We could have mourned for Anpu's loss. Said, oh, man, now you got to go back to the potter's wheel. You can just keep forming the heads and the bodies of humans from now on. Whereas before, you was running the whole setup. You know, we could mourn that, or we could celebrate the changing of the guard. And that's what people have a lot of trouble with. And unless you, as you mentioned, unless you dive into the dark and the light, you won't know who's down in the dark now and has come down into the water of the subconscious, like Atlantis. You won't know that Atlantis is now sunk into the sea, and that something else has risen in its place. You won't even know that you're still sitting there looking and searching and tapping the water for where Atlantis once was, or you're still running through the rubble trying to find where the building was, or you're still going through the scrolls trying to find these old deities who have already changed the guard into new deities. That's the dead God concept.
Powerful. And we're going to move on, because, we're going to be winding down soon. But you also said something else, brother, that was, very profound to me. That, many of us, especially within our community, somewhere along the line, we were either touched by the church or touched by the mosque. And in both instances, we were taught that God is perfection. God knows everything. It's everywhere. And, but now to hear you say that, well, no, God is not perfection. God is still seeking through us. And that, in order for God to really magnify itself, if you will, it has to experience all things, not just the good things, but a true God desires to experience all things. So now when we look out in our society and we see things that because of our programming we would categorize as evil, I mean, first thing that people are going to do is say, oh, well, that's not of God. That is the devil. And, well, first of all, you know, I've always told people all the time that God and Satan are one and the same. You know, they're just different forms of the same energy. Satan is just God's shadow side, if you will. But when we look out and we see something that we would classify as evil, no, that's not Satan. That's God as well. You know, I mean, whatever you see, everything is God. Would you say that I'm correct on that?
I would say for the most part, yeah. You know, everything is an expression, and it's very difficult to say that something is not when we're still on this pursuit to try to understand what God is. You know, so, you know, to now put God in a box and say, well, God is his rainbows and balloons, you know, and the devil is cottonmouth and, you know, hyenas, then that it just kind of doesn't really, you know, make sense, because we're speaking about something that's subjective. You know, like when you say, well, we look and see so much evil in the world. Well, evil for one person, you know, money in the bank account for another. You know, so it's really subjective. And once we can come to a place where we can observe without judgment our own life experiences, and not saying that that's the place of enlightenment. Some people think that that's enlightenment. Once you get to the point where I can observe without judgment, that's a step. That's not it yet. You know, but once we can do that, and we can kind of, again, find that middle point where there's indifference, you know, where there's indifference to the experience, not to the point that we're completely uncaring and there's no compassion, but there has to be the ability to snap back to that middle point very quickly, especially for those of us who are spiritual workers, people like yourself. You know, and you have people call up and they have questions and they need answers. People are out here suffering, they're going through, you know, yes. And if you get real, you know, you get wrapped up in the story and you get stuck there. Let's say there's something real emotional and you're stuck in your water energy and you're crying together. You can't even help this person because you don't have the clarity of thought of your earth energy or of your fire energy. So you need to come to the other side of that polarity. So that's why that middle point is so important while we're walking on earth, because it helps us from getting caught up in what's happening in the world, what we call the evil, you know, which on the spiritual side may be something else happening. Something beautiful may be happening, and it's manifesting as what we would call something evil, like a tornado or a tsunami or a hurricane. But that could be actually some wonderful movement in the spirit realm. And that's why that clarity of middle point is crucial. It's crucial to have that.
As a family, wasn't he awesome? You know, I mean, and you have to go back in the archives because this brother was here once before, and both times, I mean, like I said, I'm already sitting here planning his next visit, and it seems like every time we bring on a powerful master teacher, it's like 90 minutes goes by in 5 minutes. We're going to have to find some way to slow down the time here. But that's okay, because this brother knows as well as I do that even though he has his own successful radio show here on Blogtalk Radio, he knows that Occult Science Radio is home, and he has access to Occult Science Radio at any given time, whenever he so desires. So, brother, as we wind down, you know, please take some time to let everybody know about your website, you know, about your radio show, how you can be contacted, and any other information you wish to share with the family.
Sure, thank you. Well, first, I of course want to thank the family for listening, those who are still with us from the beginning, who are appreciating the information, and for you, of course, Brother Curtis, for allowing this platform for people like myself to be able to express these thoughts without judgment. And, for those of you who want to learn a little bit more about me and the school that I run, you can go to SaduluHouse.com, and I'll spell it. That's SADULUHOUSE.com. That's the Sadulu House. For those of you who want to learn more about the Orisha and that tradition and my perspective and how I teach it, as well as the rituals I do teach. We do work with rituals and things like that. You can go to Orisha Religion, which is ORISHARELIGION.com. And on that site, you'll also find links as well as the Sadulu House for those of you interested in taking classes or getting readings by me, things like that. Anyone interested in the community work that we do, you can go to HaruAssaan.com, HRUASSAAN.com. And on those other two sites, make sure you sign up for our newsletter. You find out more information, discounts, things like that. And on Fridays, as well as Sundays, we have a blog talk show that we do. And our blog talk URL is blogtalk.com/enlightenment and transformation. Just the words enlightenment and transformation. Okay, we have a Friday show and a Sunday show. So for anyone interested or wanting more information, or if you have questions, you can reach out to me at either SaduluHouse.com or OrishaReligion.com and ask your questions there, or schedule some time to speak to me.
Brother Priest, not just coming from me, but coming from the entire family. We love you, and we give you a wholehearted thanks for taking time out of your very busy schedule. Because believe me, family, the brother is busy. When I have to catch him when I can, because he's so busy assisting the family and helping people improve their lives, that when you do that type of work, as the brother said earlier, that people are going through it, so they're seeking out individuals like him, because they realize that, maybe the pastor and the imam they just don't have the answers anymore. Not that they ever did, but the only difference between then and now is that people didn't realize it then, whereas a lot more people are starting to realize it now. So that's why they seek out brothers like Brother Hassan. So yes, I really suggest that you check out this brother's information. And from hearing him here this evening, and once again, like I said, our first broadcast is right there in the archives. So go seek out our first show from the archives, as well as this evening's. But brother, thank you so much. Like I said, I'm going to be in your ear within the next 24 to 72 hours to set up the next appearance, because this was powerful. But thank you and yours, brother, for taking time out of your schedule to be here with us this evening, and we love and appreciate you for it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, indeed. Peace and blessings to you, brother, and we will be talking shortly.
All right. Peace.
Peace. Ton, the Occult Network. That's www.theoccultnetwork.com. The site is currently under maintenance. We have some big plans for the new site. Wait till you see it. So just bear with us. But you can also find the Occult Network on Facebook. Yes, the Occult Network has a Facebook page. Please join us over there. You can also find the Occult Network on YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And you can also find me on Facebook, Curtis Illuminated 1 Davis. So come by, become a friend of mine on Facebook. Join the Occult Network on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And once you do that, family, then you'll be totally in tune with what's going on with Occult Science Radio and the Occult Network. Thank you so much, beloved family. And as I always say in closing, peace, love, and power. And please, please walk with strength. I love you all. Peace.